The day university starts, your life changes forever. Assessments are a huge part of every single class and the workload is overwhelming. There was one point my workload reached 37 assessments during just a 5-week period. That's more than one assessment due every single day. I want to share with you how I planned my whole semester so that I could get the most out of my assessments instead of being stressed by them, falling behind, or missing an assessment entirely. I finished every assessment on time, and more importantly, I finished my degree on time using this one tool. Managing our assessments effectively means that we can get the grades that we need in each subject so that we can finish our degree in the shortest amount of time possible so that we can go out and get the job that we want. After all, that's why we're at university in the first place. To make my assessment planner, I would open up a Word document and create enough columns for all of my subjects in a semester. And this works the same for trimesters as well. I would then add an extra column at the start, and that was for week numbers and dates. Once my columns were ready, I would add in a row for every single week in the semester. And that includes lecture recess, SWAT vac, exam periods, study periods, everything went into this planner. Then in the first column, I would write the week numbers, so 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to the end of the semester. And then I would add in the date that week started on. And you can choose a Monday or a Sunday, whichever works best for you. Then in the top of my subject columns, I would put down the subject code and name. Once my template was complete, I went through the subject outline for each of my classes. Every class will come with a subject outline, although it might be called something different at your university. It's essentially a document that details every assessment that is due, including your exams, and what percentage they're worth and when they're due. So I would go through this subject outline in detail and write down every assessment that was listed onto my planner in the week that it was due. I would write the type of assessment, so for example, practical or tutorial, then write due and then the date. And then next to that in brackets, I would write the percentage of marks that it was worth. I do this for all of my assessments, including my midterms and exams as well. Once I'd finished adding the assessments for all of my subjects on the planner, I'd group them together. Smaller assessment pieces that were worth less than 5%, for example, practicals and tutorials that are often only worth 1 or 2%, were highlighted in one color. Then midterms and final exams were highlighted in a different color. And then my larger assessment pieces, so things like scientific reports, essays, literature reviews, and presentation that required a lot of work beforehand, were highlighted in a different color. And those larger assessment pieces were usually worth more marks anyway, so 10, 15, or 20%, sometimes more. Then for these larger assessment pieces, I backdated the workflow, and that's the big key to this planner. So for example, if I had a scientific report due in week 7, the week before that, so week 6, I'd write edit report. The week before that, I'd write draft report, and the week before that, I'd write research report. For every larger assessment piece, I backdated a 4-week workflow. So that helped break up that workload into separate weeks, rather than me coming along and trying to complete that major assessment piece in 1 week while also trying to complete other assessments or maybe having a midterm. Each week, I'd make sure I'd crossed off everything on my assessment planner before the next week of semester. This really helped me with prioritizing because everything on my assessment planner fell into one of 2 categories: due now or due later. All of those assessment pieces that were highlighted and worth a percentage and due in that given week were done first in the order of when they were due, which makes sense, right? I would finish what was due first. All of those items were in the due now category. Then all of those workflow items that I put down for my larger assessment pieces, like editing reports or researching for presentations, fell into that due later category. Once I completed all of my due nows, I then worked on my due laters. So all of those other workflow pieces for my larger assessments. But they still got crossed off. I still did everything in that week before I moved on to the next, so that I could save myself a whole lot of stress and I could finish every assessment piece on time. Key is to never go into the next week with something on the planner that wasn't marked off from the previous week. There is actually a third category, which is the don't do's. And the don't do's can fall off during semester. So things like required reading. I didn't do any of my required reading after first semester of second year because my assessment workload was just too big. It was more important for me to go to class, go to practicals and tutorials and things like that, and complete my assessments on time than it was to do some required reading. Sure, I would do my reading if I had time, but after first year, I just didn't. Using the assessment planner and these 3 categories stopped me from trying to do everything, because you just can't, at least not in my experience. But planning my assessments helped reduce my stress because I didn't even have to think about my workload. I would print off my assessment planner and put it up on my wall. Then each week I just had to look at it to see what was due, how much it was worth, how much work I should be putting into it, and how much time that would probably take me. And to be honest, I felt a really great sense of satisfaction whenever I was able to cross something off my assessment planner. I was able to physically see that I was progressing through my semester and through my degree, and that university wouldn't last forever, which it can sometimes feel like. Now you're probably wondering where attendance fits in here. Going to lectures, tutorials, and practicals never falls into the don't do category. Attendance is our golden ticket to passing. We should go to every lecture, practical, tutorial, everything that has a face-to-face component. That way we'll be able to hear everything the professor has to say about the content, and we can ask them questions as well, which helps speed up our assessment process, because the worst thing is to be sitting at home working on an assessment, having some questions, when if we had gone to class we could have asked them and sped up that whole process and saved ourselves some time. If you go to every class, it's almost impossible to fail. Unless, of course, you don't submit all your assessments. But there's something else I haven't mentioned that can make a huge difference to managing your university workload and stress levels. And if you get good at this, you can potentially spend less time on your university work and still get good grades. So watch this video next to learn how I graduated my degree in 4 years with the university medal.